There was a whole discussion on Twitter I saw about lore.
Is this lore? So again, I didn't quite know how to preface it.
I don't know. Is it lore? Is it not? It could be.
Like, oh, it'd be really cool to do some like some lore stuff like in my style.
Lore with Will is coming soon. You didn't hear that from me though.
It wasn't canon, everyone. It wasn't canon.
I'm hoping more improv. That's kind of the only way I do it.
Like, it has been mainly improv. I actually just DM'd like Dream like while I was streaming.
At first, are we in lore mode? I'm in love with Will.
On the same page, right? As in for lore on the Dream SMP.
You killed him too fat. What do you mean? He didn't even get to say his line. Man had no quote out of his lore. He just died.
I know, but you're just being sort of a dick.
Canon. He had his chance to say his line.
You guys and your freaking scripted lore shenanigans.
He said.
That was entirely relevant to the plot, Tommy.
That is,
Come on.
yeah. That's.
So then, was it like, did you plan roleplay from the start or no?
No.
No. Fuck, that was when Wilbur came in.
It's been around for a while, this question on what is considered lore on the Dream SMP. Like, when does lore begin? Like, what is considered lore if they're on the server but not in character, but also like kind of in character, because the representation of the character on the Dream SMP is really similar to the streamer. Is that considered lore? When did lore begin? Like, did it begin with Wilbur, or did it be like it kind of began with Tommy?
Or did it?
Or did it? Did it begin with George and Sapnap? And Punk and the Lemon Tree. Like, when you're playing Minecraft, you're kind of just automatically role-playing, and I think you said that before, Ryan.
They weren't conscious of what was happening. When they were just like, oh, I made my house. Oh, somebody burned my house. Therefore, I'm gonna hold a grudge. That's gonna influence my decision.
The progression of the story in the Dream SMP is really interesting and noticeable. But at the beginning, those goofing around bits, that was all they knew and like all we watched, and it was perfectly entertaining and fine to be funny, but still have like that character driven story behind it. If before everything was canon, even when they were just goofing around, why doesn't that apply now?
I think that's because people became self-conscious.
The streamers.
They didn't think about it. And at some point, a lot of people made them aware that canon cannot really be messed with because it creates inconsistencies. Like, a story is something noble. You can't just goof around. I think it's a tremendous work that needs a lot of investment and dedication, and you need to be careful of what you're doing, because if you mess it up for you, but also for everybody. It's not just you goofing around.
I think a big part of what caused the lore to shift to this separation, this divide between streamer and character, was the sort of audience pressure for them to do so. We have things like some of the more villainous characters who got hated on because people thought the streamers were also that way. I don't remember who it was, but there was someone who was like, oh man, I hate that lore's so complicated that I can't interact with certain people on the Dream SMP now because we're supposed to be enemies. Like, it's impacted them a lot.
I've seen that. People like Quackity saying, oh yeah, but now you can't really goof anymore because like so many expect something like specific.
So I also really want to touch it, Ryan, on what you were saying about a story being a noble thing. There are very, very noble and beautiful and eloquent stories that are designed to just blow you away with their beauty. But I don't think that is essential for a story. A story does not have to be serious. That's why the genre of comedy exists. So I don't think that it's necessarily that storytelling is a noble thing in that sense. I think it's that people shy away from what they don't know or understand. They don't know or understand why the Dream SMP works. And so with that, because it's not a book or a movie or something that is so nice, pretty, put together traditional story, they say this can't be a story at all. This isn't the art of storytelling. It's got to be something else because this isn't what we're used to. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I agree with that. And I've seen like CC talking about their like impact on DreamSMP, such as Quackity, but also Renbu, wanting to prove that like because they had such fun and good experience and like creative happiness in a way.
I think in terms of how creative I get and how creative my job forces me to be, this is the most creative I've been probably ever. I'd say almost ever. And I enjoy it a lot.
This need was born of getting closer to the type of storytelling, and we are also here for that. The Pandora Project, why conventional storytelling is seen as such a good thing and a desirable thing and something you gotta aim for. Just like YouTubers when they're doing YouTube and they love what they're doing and it's amazing and it works, and suddenly they have to justify themselves like being like, oh no, actually I'm aiming for TV, I'm aiming for cinema.
But there's something about streaming and about content creation that's pushing itself into the world of popular media, and it has been for the last couple of years.
I mean, if I'm going to be super honest, streamers, right, content creation has seen so many evolutions over the years, and it started off 2010-11 with like Wong Fu, Brian Higa, Shane Dawson, and all those guys sort of kicked it off. And then Freddie and those guys showed you can level it up. And then streamers literally changed the game of how it works by just creating an entirely new form of content. So I think anyone that's succeeding in this space is there for a reason. So it's really cool to see.
Thank you, man.
Is scripted lore considered more canon in the DreamSMP story than those goofing around bits?
Well, I think for me, what makes something canon is either the CC himself or herself or themselves tell you that it's canon, or it has a direct impact in others' canon. Like for example, if you blow up Blumenberg, obviously the other characters cannot interact with Blumenberg anymore and have to go without it, and they are grieving because they saw everything and they're obviously impacted, are gonna make the blow up of Blumenberg canon. Just like we talk a little bit with AJ about Dream and Fundy's marriage, technically not considered canon.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it has a canon value because Fundy reacted to it in canon and based like a lot of his character's development on that grieving and that betrayal. So for me, it holds a weight in that manner. So considering that, it doesn't need to be that scripted or that like official to be canon as long as it impacts the other, in my opinion.
I guess with the way that I view things being canon, going back to what you were saying, Nebitri, like with the whole like scripted versus goofing around bits, to me, it really depends on what bits you're referring to. Because with the whole goofing around bits, sometimes they can easily be non-canon and others are. It really varies when it comes to those goofing around bits. Because as you said, Ryan, like blowing up Blumenberg is a big thing that affects a lot of people. So that is something that is more likely to be scripted than non-scripted. But with a bit that's just basically them goofing around, that's a more of a gray area, and it just depends on exactly what is going on in that given bit.
We can use Tommy's exile as an example, actually. The contrast between some things that happen during exile and the 80% of the stream is so vastly different. You get Tommy and he's alone, and he's completely alone, and he talks about how alone he is. And you get Dream coming, you get the armor being destroyed, and then Dream and Tommy just talk for the rest of the time about the most out of canon stuff. But is it still canon? Because they're still kind of in character.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's, at least to me, that's an example of where it would be canon, because it still affects the characters.
I think that the reason you can say that is canon is because when you look at how everything unfolds with Exile and how Tommy has reacted to it more recently, it's clear that there was an effect on his character from those moments that weren't negative in Exile. And that's really the divide between the fully canon Exile and the dubiously canon Exile is that part of it is happy. And I think that it actually does a disservice to Exile to not canonize the positive interaction between Dream and Tommy at that point, because that was a significant part of the manipulation and stuff happening in their relationship.
Absolutely.
So when you look at the fandom and how they've reacted to Exile, as the person who's studying this super closely, people are needing to see that lightness to be able to identify the true nature of their relationship. You can't just ignore it, and therefore, it's canon.